このカードにかける。俺はリバースカードをセットし、ターンエンドだ。
Welcome back, guys. This is episode 8 of On the Draw. I'm one of your hosts, Sang, and today I'm with Cole and Caleb.
What's good?
Yo, what up?
Yeah, so today's episode, we're just going over a couple of stuff for today. But first, we have the question of the day. Question of the episode: what card do you want to see most on or off the ban list? We can start off with Cole.
Yo, my boy, Black Dragon, he deserves to be free at last. Please free him. It's not broken. It's not broken enough to be on the ban list.
I don't know, man. Black Dragon's kind of a scary card.
Yeah, search X amount of cards. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, up to 3 rock monsters. I mean, come on. And I'm pretty sure if it's just sent from field to graveyard. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe it would be cool to see like rock come back. Because I know you obviously play around with rock, but I think this card's just busted. I don't think they should have ever printed this card, to be honest with you. Especially since it does have a special summon, a free special basically. If you
From
play
hand
the
or
game with
grave.
Earth monsters.
It's the 5th dragon ruler we got to see.
It's insane.
I don't know.
I would have to disagree with you. I don't think it'll ever come off, but I mean, maybe. Obviously, like the Union Carrier isn't a thing anymore, but there's still ways to get this in your grave or whatever else it might be. You can search this card with 2 level 4s, so.
I don't know. One can only hope. I want my rock deck to be playable once again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even like seeing Black Dragon when Animancipators was popular, because this is what made them so ridiculously good.
Yeah, not Needle Fiber, Link Cross,
Yeah, not
none
like
of
what everyone
none
was
of
playing.
those cards. It was
Bro,
Black
this searches
Dragon.
them 3 of their main deck monsters that basically all special summon themselves. It's busted.
What? No.
Yeah, Sang, you got a pretty interesting one here.
So, for me personally, I didn't really care about what comes off or on. I'll probably just play anything, but what I'm thinking would change the meta up a bit. Well, not even change the meta, but change how some decks would play is Heavy Storm coming back. I think
You think Heavy Storm would be more likely, or Trunade? Trunade returns, right?
Yeah, Trunade returns everything on field. Heavy Storm destroys everything.
I think Heavy Storm.
Yeah, I think it's either between one of those two that they could come back.
I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword, because there's a lot of cards that you can return to hand and get crazy advantage off of, but there's also a lot of cards that you can destroy, of your own cards, that you're also going to get advantage. So it's interesting, but yeah, I mean, I think it could come back to one.
If I think of Heavy or Giant Trunade coming back, I'm thinking bouncing back floodgates that you activated on your opponent's turn.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Outing your own floodgates just to reset them again sounds pretty cancer.
But if Konami just bans all the floodgates, you don't have to out your own floodgates.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least Heavy Storm outs them, but it just gets rid of them. So that's why I see the argument that this card could come back over Giant Trunade.
Unchained with Heavy Storm?
Oh,
insane! Insane. Mine, I think a lot of people will agree with, and is probably the most popular one. Elbion Sanctifier, get that shit out of here. I can't believe that this card's illegal. I can't believe that it can't be targeted, and I can't believe that it's so easy to make and branded in other decks as well. I'm playing it in Voiceless Voice. So, this card just isn't fair. Being able to special summon broken monsters on your opponent's field is dumb. Obviously, some that come to mind are Ibli, the Gimmick Puppet, Jowgen. I mean, there's just a ton of different options. And not even that, you don't even have to do a Floodgate monster, but being able to special summon a monster to your side as well, and then give your opponent nothing can be really good.
Yeah.
It can allow you to play on your opponent's turn, which, I don't know. I think that this card is okay on paper, but there's just too many cards that it can abuse.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to see more of our ban list prediction and thoughts, go check out our video from a week ago with Cole and I.
Hopefully we see this ban list pretty soon.
Yeah, I hope we see
I'm
it too.
getting sick of this format. I'm over it. But yeah, so make sure you guys answer the question of the episode in the comments. What do you want to see on or off the ban list, and give us a reason why. Maybe we can have a couple of friendly discussions. But yeah, so we're gonna go on to the main event of the podcast here. We're gonna be talking about kind of preparing for events, and different things that we do and things that we suggest and things that we should be doing. So we're gonna start off with what makes you pick a certain deck for events. I don't know if one of you guys want to start it off, but
I think Sang should start it off. I mean, he's usually the meta player.
Oh no, what makes me pick a certain deck for an event? I would look for consistency, power, and the ability to break boards. That's why I think it comes down to what I would personally choose for a deck. I also choose between like probably the top 3 decks that I think will be represented the most and try to play around those.
do you think that like being able to break boards and being able to play through boards is kind of the same thing, or do you view those as different things?
I view them kind of similarly.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well, because I feel like there have been a lot of decks that aren't board breaking decks, but decks that can just play through a
Yeah.
lot of different types of interaction.
hmm
Obviously, like Snake Eyes is one that comes to mind just because of how good it is right now. Like, there's
hmm
not a lot of board breakers that stop that deck because it just plays through a lot of different things, and so I think that's definitely a really good point. Do you ever switch up your deck, like even for like locals, regionals, like YCS? Doesn't matter what event you're going to.
Like for loco scene, I usually mainly use it for like maybe testing out like different versions of the deck. Sometimes I play like a fun deck, but most of the time I use locals as like testing grounds when I go play.
Definitely.
But
What
yeah,
about you, Cole? Or I guess, did you have anything else to add?
nah, we could go on to goal next.
Uh, for me, there's like a couple criterias the deck has to like meet. For me, it's the ability to play through hand traps. Like if you get stopped after one hand trap, I feel like the deck is lacking in the power, that it needs. And then I always love like the surprise factor, like when I'm picking decks. Like if I'm bringing a deck to an event, I my favorite thing, talked about this last week, is like sitting across from my opponent and they just like don't know like the key points or to hit my deck or like what my deck really does.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely a good point, and I think it kind of depends on what you're going to too, like on how crazy of a surprise you can bring, and like what kind of deck you can play. But I guess to go off your first point, I think that that's something I struggle with. I think a lot of really fun decks that I'm really interested in playing in just die to a hand trap, die to one, in a single Imperm or a single Ash Blossom. So I think that's really kind of restricting on the amount of stuff that I can actually play competitively. Because a lot of the fun decks do. Like Gen X is one that comes to mind just because it looks really interesting and can do some crazy things, but one Imperm on Link 1, and they just end their turn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always tough picking and like kind of having that balance between stuff that's competitive and what you actually enjoy playing as well.
Yep.
Mine kind of comes down to, I guess, the 3 different levels of events. Locals, for example, like it depends on where we are in the season. If we're like preparing for a regional or a YCS or Nats, I'm most likely going to be playing my main deck. I'm going to be practicing as much as I can with it, but there are times like what we're in right now where it's kind of a lull. I'm not preparing for a regional, I'm not going to Nats, anything like that. So I'm going to try out like some different fun things, some pet projects. Um, and then it's kind of similar with regionals. Like if you have your invite, then you can kind of mess around with some different things, some FDKs, some different deck types, or like some sleeper picks that might be, crazy if this, War Rock got top 8, something crazy like that. But if you don't have your invite, obviously you want to be playing as competitive as possible. And then obviously anything that's like YCS or better, you're going to want to pick the best deck or the second best deck in the format. If you're going to like this high level of an event, there's not really much point to experiment or test out different things, just because the decks in the room are going to be a lot more meta. And like obviously there's exceptions to that rule, like if you have like third, fourth, fifth best deck and it's a deck that you've mastered, like kind of branded comes to mind, like really good branded players. Like, granted, it's not the first or second best deck, but it's still, they have a chance to win any game. They can put themselves into positions to win any game. So I think that's kind of how I choose what deck I'm playing. Depends on where I'm at in the competitive scene and what I'm trying to accomplish.
For sure, for sure.
You guys have anything else you want to add to the what kind of decks you like to pick, or?
Well, I think when picking a deck too, there's also the fact if you're going to like such a high level event like a YCS, being able to make a guess like a prediction on like making a meta call on certain cards being played and like just like interesting tech cards that people haven't thought of before. Like looking back at tier format, there is Hani Jawari. He was playing foolish what was that foolish card called? It was like the one that sends back.
Foolish Return.
Yeah, foolish return. Not many
Yep.
people were playing it. That was like an interesting tech for the format. It helped win games for him. Like it's cards like those and like knowledge of the game that helps you with like being ready for an event like this. Looking at another card like this format, yeah, Lullaby was one of them. I'm like blanking on another one, but like Lullaby was another one that's like people weren't playing before, but like some hot or pro players were playing it as a tech for some YCSs that people weren't thinking of. Stuff like that also
Yeah.
adds a lot.
And I think that's like a really cool part of the YCSs and those bigger events is, like I said before, like all the decks in the room are mostly going to be meta. It's usually going to be the top 3 decks. So like, since that's more likely, like you're the options to bring kind of those more niche cards. Like I just did a video on Marionette Might, and like
Hmm.
Jesse Cotton used Marionette Might when Unchained was great, and like nobody else was doing that, but it came up because Unchained was the best deck, and it did have a really good counter to it. So I think it's kind of cool that you can play certain cards like that, but you also have to know, like, that's only for those types of levels of events. You don't want to play Lullaby of Obedience at locals for your one other Snake Eyes player, or you don't want to play Marionette Might for your one Unchained player, or whatever it might be. So it's just kind of determining what level of competition and then going from there. But I really like those points, and that's really kind of what sets some of those guys apart from the rest of the crowd.
Yeah, for sure.
But that'll kind of lead us into the next question, I think, here. How should you prepare for events? So we talk about preparation a lot. In a lot of our videos, it comes up just randomly and how you should be preparing, but we'll kind of break this down by going through those different levels of events. So do you guys have any like kind of tips on locals? Obviously, it's a little bit more simple. Not a
Yeah,
lot that goes into it.
a little more casual compared to other events for the
I
most part.
I think locals is like a good testing ground to practice like side decking. Because I mean, like you go every week, you know, like what people are playing, so you can like practice like your side deck and like what to put into it and like your side deck patterns. Like I think it's a good way to like build that up. And I feel like a lot of people don't utilize that as much. They'll just keep bringing like the same side deck they use for like higher level events, but you can like practice, trying to make like calls for locals and stuff like that.
And I think, I mean, you don't really need to bring a lot to locals either, which is nice. You can just go with like a mat deck box, a deck, obviously. And
Mm.
like, usually you don't even have to bring dice. People usually have dice. And then like snacks and drinks, but a lot of your local game stores have snacks for sale. P.S. Make sure you support your local game stores. Um, Deodorant also. Please make sure
Yeah,
that you guys are wearing deodorant. I mean, I know I've caught myself getting a little sweaty sometimes, but it's important to know that there's other people there.
yeah. Be sure to
And I think,
shower.
yeah, be cleanly.
Mm.
And I think that the last thing I got here is a good attitude. Locals isn't supposed to be hyper serious. It's not. It can be at certain times if you're matched up against somebody who is on an equal level as you, but like most people are going there to get away, hang out, see their friends, play some Yu-Gi-Oh, so nobody likes playing against that stickler at locals that's just always in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, like keep the competitiveness there, but be like a little bit more loose about it. Like have
Well,
fun and like have fun with your opponent. Don't just like, put up a wall and not talk to them.
Like I
Usually it's a
think
good
it
thing.
really depends. It depends on if your locals is more of a casual locals or like if it's more of a competitive. Like if you look at like the bigger states like California or Texas, those locals are probably more competitive compared to like a
Mm.
casual locals.
Yeah,
So you
it's a
need to
really good
know
point.
where you're like going and what you're like gonna be playing against for the most part. If like most locals like around us is around like 20 to 25 players. What about you, Caleb? I know you go to different locals than us.
Yeah, I mean it depends on like this week with Infinite Forbidden being the pre-release, it'll be probably 20 25, but
Mhm.
usually it's 10, 15, somewhere around there. Sometimes there's 8, sometimes there's, more.
Yeah.
Just depends, but yeah, it's I would say it's definitely more casual, but that is a really good point because there are a lot of locals that people go to that they are extremely competitive and they're basically like their own mini regionals.
Hmm.
Mm.
Which will actually lead us into regionals. Um, this is where it gets a little bit more serious. You're here for something. You're trying to accomplish something. So testing. I mean, we harp on it all the time. Test, test, test. It's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, that's like the worst feeling is when you show up to a regional and you're like, oh man, I'm not confident. And like when I'm playing, and it's
Yeah,
like you need to test and like figure out your deck and like there's obviously like you can watch combo videos, but it's like you need to see the lines, you know.
yeah, for sure. I mean, just putting in any type of practice, going to locals, I think is important because that's in-person testing, which is different than your dueling book testing or whatever it might be. Um, I think getting better with friends as well. Like obviously we have our group.
Yeah, like a
Shout out to
testing
the
circle. Yeah.
gang. But yeah, a lot of people have really good testing circles, and I think it's important because it helps you improve and it helps other people improve. And the better I make you sang or the better I make Cole, the better you guys are gonna make me. And it's an endless cycle. So get a good group. And there are a lot of different ways to practice as well. Are there like any that you guys prefer? Like just maybe just the regular dueling book, or do you like the open hand, or like maybe discussing plays, whatever it might be?
Like if I'm testing, I would like to have like one dedicated like testing partner with like a bounce ideas off of. Like that's what Cole and I did for the first YCS Indy. And that's what we did for like some regionals as well. But like I usually test with mostly Cole and Greg for the most part when I'm like going through the decks that I want to play. But like I try to help
Yeah.
them with like the what's meta for right now.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, we usually like what we'll do like to start our testing sessions. We'll like go over our list and like what should change, and then we'll like play a couple games, and then we'll relook at the list, and we'll like just keep testing and repeating that over and over till we feel confident in what we're bringing.
Yeah. Definitely. I think saying you mentioned like bouncing ideas off, I think like having an open discussion during the duel is important. Like obviously if you're just playing, like you don't want to be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking I want to do, or whatever. But if you are testing specifically to get better, like being able to discuss, like, hey, do you think that this would be better, or do you think I should go this play line, or like, how is this? Like, how do you feel about this? Like, without giving out too much like hand knowledge, but still kind of helping them play through different things and whatever else it might be.
Yeah.
I know Cole, you do a lot of test hands. I've seen you at our friend locals just with a deck, drawing 5 cards, shuffling it, drawing 5 cards, shuffling it. Um, do you have any kind of big reason why, or is it just to make sure that your deck's consistent, you're not bricking too much?
Yeah, that's like the biggest thing is like testing consistency. Like if you're constantly drawing 5 cards and you think to yourself like, "Oh man, this hand sucks," then that's time to go back to the drawing board. So
For
that's
sure.
that's one thing I do all the time is like I'll draw 5 cards, and then sometimes I do this thing where I like draw five and then I put those five aside and I'll just like keep drawing five off the top. And like the more times look at my hand and I see that it's playable, like the better I feel about my deck, like consistency wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you know whether or not your deck's going to be a good list or you need to change your deck building, like you said before.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've been kind of experimenting with during my testing, more so with like for the latest regionals in the YCS, was I have like a wheel that I spin, and it'll have different like interruptions and hand traps on it. And I'll spin that wheel, and if I get like imperm, I'll open my hand and I'll see like, hey, like where does imperm hurt me the most, and how can I play around it, and how can I play through it. And I think it does help a lot. It's a little bit more difficult because obviously you're not actually playing against somebody, but if you do it like at the most effective time, then when your opponent doesn't do it at the most effective time, it's nice because then you know that you can still play through it. So I think that's kind of something I've been working around with, but I think it's important to be able to know how to play through different things.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing for testing too, this will help like way in the long run is like look at like the top like 3 decks, or maybe even if you want to go to top 5 decks, build deck lists for them, and then when you're like when Sang is like testing the deck he's gonna bring for an event, like play those decks against them. It will help them learn the interactions with like the other decks that are in the format, and it'll also help you like learn like more about the deck itself. Like once you play a deck and learn it and you know like the interaction points with it, it makes going against it so much easier.
It's something I wish that I did more of. I've done it a couple of times, but it's definitely something that I don't do because I just feel like, oh, hey, I've played this meta so much. I know what all these decks do, but it you really don't. I mean, you know what the basics are, but when you actually play that deck and know the different small interactions and different weird hands and where they can get hurt the most, I think that does help a lot. And just knowing like what a hand could look like for that deck as well can be important, so you can try to know what they're playing or what might be in their hand.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think also like bringing stuff to a regional is important, like what you're gonna bring. Um, Start off with the basics, the basic necessities of life, food and
Yeah.
water.
That is like
I think it's a
crucial. I feel like a lot of
yeah,
people overlook the food and water thing because like food at the venue, low key is going to be super expensive, or they're not going to have any at all.
Yeah.
So you need to
yeah,
like just prepare for that because like I mean, it is a long day. Like when we went to Rosemont, that was like 10 rounds. We were there from like 8 a.m. to like 10, 11 p.m. So those days do get long and like you do get tired, and being hungry is like honestly probably one of the worst feelings when you're like trying to play and
Yeah.
all you can
When
think
you're
about
trying to
is eating a
concentrate.
burger.
yeah. And then just to go off of my own experiences, try to vary what you bring as well. I had one that I went to where I only brought Cliff Bars, and it was fine for my hunger, but it destroyed my stomach. It was not great, which actually caused issues for my play because I was constantly like, "Oop, my stomach doesn't feel great." But so yeah, try to vary what you bring. And another pro tip that I do that I haven't really seen many other people do, or really anybody at all, is a camelback. Like one of those little backpacks that you can put water in. I get so many compliments on it when I'm at like an event. But like, oh, that's such a good idea. I don't know how I didn't think of it. And I'll sit there like if I'm playing somebody, if I need to think, like instead of having like that gum or whatever, I'll just take a sip of water. Or if I'm like stressing out about something, it really just kind of resets me and lets me like, okay, this is what the board state looks like. This is what I'm gonna do instead of getting caught up in like how you were thinking, if that makes sense. So I think that, and it helps with your water, obviously. I just think that's a cool tip if you can afford one.
Hmm.
Yeah. Also, like for most events, people try to bring like a deck box, their binder, like playmat, stuff like that. Just pack simple and easy. Unless
So
you're
yeah,
like
simple.
trying to sell to vendors or trying to get some trades.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't need to bring your entire collection to an event, especially like people have sticky hands. So
Yep.
it's like just try to
Always make
bring
sure
the
to
bare
watch your
minimum.
stuff.
exactly. Yeah, it's always you're moving around a lot, so you really don't want to lose anything or get anything stolen. And then this is something I I should probably work on, but always try to keep it in front of you or with friends. I
That's
have
the
a really
Caleb
bad
special.
tendency, yeah, to leave my stuff with my friends, which I trust them and everything like that, but I shouldn't put that on them, if round gets called and they're looking for me or whatever it might be. But just make sure that it's always within somebody that you trust as you just don't want to lose something.
Yep.
You hear the horror stories of people losing $1,000 deck boxes, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, that sucks.
Yeah. You always hear somebody else wants your stuff more than you.
Yep.
Exactly.
Better keep your eyes on your stuff.
Yep.
And last but not least, what to bring? I'd like to repeat deodorant.
Mm-hmm.
But like, let's go into
Well,
at the actual regional.
I was gonna
Unless, did
say,
you have anything else? Yeah, sorry.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think, like, when you are going to a regional, like, it takes maybe 20 minutes to just pre-fill out a deck list instead of being that guy at the event, sitting outside on the ground with your deck organized, like, trying to fill out a deck list. Like, just do it at home. Because it just takes up so much time when you're at the event, and you feel so much more less stressed when you just show up with your deck list and hand it in, or even just like pre-regging for an event that's becoming a more popular thing is just a pre-reg.
Yeah.
But just having like that prepared, it's just like a little bit less stressful on you as a player to, you just show up and just turn it in.
Yeah, go back to my own experiences as well. I've suffered from that where I didn't have a a deck list filled out, and then I actually got cut off from round one, so I had a round one loss.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is important. You don't. It was one of the worst feelings I've had. We traveled like 6 hours to this event, and there was like 11 people that got cut off, and they just wouldn't make an exception. But it was my own fault because I wasn't prepared. So it's kind of the whole point of what we're trying to tell you.
That ended
The
up coming
takeaways.
back to bite you, didn't it? Like you were at top tables and
Yep.
you lost.
Yeah, I mean, if I went to that round one loss, I don't think I would have topped 16 or anything, but I definitely would have gotten another invite. But that's okay. We learn from it. That's the biggest thing as well. Learning from it.
Mm-hmm.
Make mistakes, but don't make them again.
Another thing I would like to add too is I would get in the habit of like bringing like a pencil and a notepad, like a
Yep.
small one for keeping track of life points. Because when it comes down to a life point dispute, the person that has it on paper will be ruled in favor. And
Yeah.
it's like
Exactly.
nice to be able to like look over at your paper and like see, oh yep, I attacked last turn, I attacked for this much, and instead of like having just neuron up where you don't really know how you got to 3,000 life points, but you're there.
Yeah. Especially with like certain decks that are gonna be like burning you. Like volcanic. I played a volcanic deck at locals yesterday, and it's like, well, let me get up my notepad real quick because I know I'm gonna get burned 10 different times. So
Yeah.
you just don't want to get in a dispute like that because usually it ends up pretty ugly between you and the other person, like arguing about what hit and what didn't and how much the differential was. So, but yeah, when you're in the actual regional, um, it's kind of important to do a lot of different things, but you want to be able to like read your opponent based on a lot of different certain things. Uh, you guys want to start off with like how you like to read your opponent or what certain things you look for?
I just look for how they act when they sit down and how they start playing. Like that's what I look for. How they react to their hand most of the time. Sometimes they have a poker face. Sometimes they like give like a little surprised face, or like they're like, "Oh, this hand is broken." Some stuff like that. Just try to go through like a mental game, just see how my opponent acts whenever they play.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. For me, the biggest thing when I sit down for my opponent, it's the takeout with how they take out their cards and how they like lay out their stuff. For me, that's like a big tell of like between a good opponent and a bad opponent, how they present themselves.
Do you want to kind of expand on that? Because I'm a little curious. I guess that's never really something that I've noticed.
Like I always try to rush to my table to be the first one to sit down, and like also placement is huge. I think that's a lot of people don't really like look at that. They just kind of sit down wherever. But like,
Find a clock.
yeah, I always sit where I can like look at a clock, and like I always try to sit on the same side and like try to look at the clock. And but like how my opponent, like if they just like rush and they like just throw all their stuff out, to me it just seems like it almost seems sloppy. It sounds weird to say, but it seems like sloppy how they like present themselves, and to me it's like, okay, this person probably is gonna make a lot of misplays and like be sloppy about their play, and like I can like read that just by how they like take out their stuff. But like if some guy comes out and they like cleanly like fold out their spell ground and they pull out their super duper calculator, and like that to me is like a good read. Like, okay, this person's more organized, probably more organized with their thoughts.
kind of like a routine almost.
Yeah.
Like you take out your deck box, you take out your deck, you put your side deck, your extra deck, your deck, you put your field center, you put your dice right on top of your field center. Just like a organized approach to it. I definitely see what you're talking about now. That makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just helps me read my opponent before the match even starts.
For sure. And I think that's a good point. Like it's kind of one of those little advantages that you can get up. Like even if it's like they might be the best player in the world, but even if it for you it's a little bit of a confidence boost, that we take those. We take those for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a couple other things that like more physical things as well that might give you an advantage. Deck size. If you're going nowadays, at least you're going and you see a 60 card deck, probably branded. It's probably like another similar deck. So I think if you ask your opponent what their deck size is, or you can see that it's a bigger deck, you might be able to make a couple reads. This one's less important, but like your table number, like where you're at in the tables can be important as well. If you're at table 10, you're going to see probably 50% chance of the best deck, 25% of the second best, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're more on like the lower tables, it can be just about anything. So you got to be prepared for anything.
Yeah. I think that's more like depending on what round it is, more likely to. Like how
Yeah, for
far you're
sure.
playing in.
Yeah, I mean, even Jesse Conn can lose round one. Well, actually, he can't. He's got a UDS belt.
Well, that's only for YCSers.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, you lose round one, and then you could be at table 700 and still be like a really good player, but it's just the way that it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last thing that might give you an advantage is their accessories. Some people like to match their deck with their accessories. So like you play a flu and you have a flu deck and you have flu field center and flu sleeves. Like there's probably a good chance you're playing flu, and obviously sometimes that might throw you off. But just to give you a little bit more of like preparedness for that certain deck, even if that's not what they're playing.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I started to do more of is like taking mental notes during the match. Like if you activate something and they like shotgun an Ash Blossom, like I take that into mental consideration that maybe my opponent really doesn't know what my deck does, or like they don't know like how to counter like a top deck. Like they just shotgun the interaction. So like
Yep.
it allows me to like go into game 2 a little bit more confident. Like I'm gonna activate something first, and then hopefully they shotgun it again.
Try to bait it out.
Yeah, try to bait
Yeah, I know.
out.
That was something I did when I started. And I still fall into this issue, is like just the first thing that happens. If you stop that, they can't play, because it does happen sometimes, where you stop their first thing and then they just pass. But more likely than not, it's a bait or they have other ways to play through it. So if you see that, then there's a better chance that they're not as knowledgeable on your deck matchup.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you guys like to do in between matches? This is kind of another thing that not a lot of people speak about. There are some good tendencies that you can get into in between matches.
I would say the biggest thing is don't get tilted. You cannot lose your confidence and your focus in between matches. Like you don't take things so hard when you like get out of a game. You're like, oh man, like only if I would have played better and this and that, and like I suck, blah blah blah. Like try to throw that mindset out of the window and like just move forward, learn from your mistakes, and like especially like if you're with a group of friends, like find your group of friends and like explain what happened, then they can like give feedback on like what to do next time.
And another thing about that too, I was like, make sure to like unside after your match, all that stuff.
That's a big one, yeah.
That's a really good point. Thank you for saying that, actually, because
yeah. Being able to like talk to your opponent about what's in their hand and what they played, and like seeing like what you could have done differently, like see the different lines. I think that's a very big thing too. Seeing like what you could have done, what other thing you could have done to maybe put yourself in a better position.
yeah, and I like to also kind of tell my opponent like things that they might have done that made me better, or like gave me more advantage. After the match, obviously.
Yeah.
But you want everybody to be better. It's if they can help you, and it does help, because I've had multiple people tell me things that I was doing wrong that I fixed, and then I became better with that deck, or as just in general. So Yeah, discussion is really important, and you can kind of bounce ideas off your opponent if they're willing. Some people just get up and leave, but it's always nice when they stick behind for a minute or two and just kind of talk about the match. But also, like, doing that with your friends is important. Just to know like what misplays you made, how you can improve on them, or even like texts that they might be seeing that you weren't thinking of, or decks that they're playing. Discussion is really important. It's going to help you get better and not tilt, so that you can be confident for your next round.
Yeah.
Sure.
For me, I like to go on a smoke break. But even if you don't smoke, like just going outside and getting some fresh air is really nice. It feels good. It gives more oxygen to your brain. It helps you think a lot more. It relaxes you. So even if you don't smoke, like step outside every once in a while.
It is
Enjoy
nice to
the
get fresh
weather.
air, for sure.
And then like hydrating, eating, stretching, I think is kind of another thing. Obviously, you're not working out or doing any physical activity, but stretching is good to keep your mind sharp and feel better in general as a whole body.
Yeah, because you're definitely, I mean, you're going to be sitting for maybe up to 45 minutes at a time. So
Yeah.
just, take that into consideration and walk around a little bit. Like, don't just sit down immediately after the round and just sit there. Like, walk around
Yeah, that's
and.
gonna fatigue you. You guys have anything else how you want to prepare for regionals?
No, I think
I think we hit most of the points already.
yeah.
Perfect. We'll get to the pinnacle, the higher events, the YCSs and the worlds and things like that.
Just skipped over
So
Nats. We're going right to Worlds, baby.
yeah, well, it was implied.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think testing. This is where you got to really kick it into gear testing. Kind of increasing the amount of testing that you do as it gets closer. If you're a month away, maybe an hour a day. If you're 2 weeks away, bump it up to 2 or 3 hours a day. Like it seems like a lot, but it really is gonna help you. And if you're actually taking it seriously enough to travel to a YCS, you might as well put in the extra time and actually try to get something from it.
hmm Yeah, that was something when Sang and I were preparing for the last YCS Indy. It was like we would get home from work and it was like test for like 4 hours
Mm-hmm.
every day.
Do you guys ever suffer from like over testing? I think that's something that I get fatigued from a lot as it gets closer to those big events, is testing too much and just getting kind of sick of it.
Not really for me. If like I'm really into Yu-Gi-Oh at the time, then I'm fine testing for however long that we need
hmm
to. But like if I'm like not into Yu-Gi-Oh, like right now, I'm like I don't want to play this game that much right now. I'm like just taking a step back from it all.
Yeah. I just think it's kind of important not to, if it's something that you kind of see regularly, like not to
Hmm.
overtest, because it does stink, and it kind of ruins the fun of it, and like makes it less enjoyable when you're testing for too long and you just get too fatigued, and then you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just, don't be afraid to take a break, or if you're not feeling it that day, whatever, try it later or try it tomorrow.
Take a game break. That's what
Game break.
that's what saying. We usually just jump on Apex if we
Yeah.
need a break. It's good to get your mind going, in between the testing sessions.
Yeah. And then I noticed that, Cole, you mentioned it before, but like this is probably where you're gonna want to try playing different decks more, whether it be for your friends' testing purposes or for your own.
hmm
Um, this is probably where it's gonna be a lot more applicable and
Yeah.
necessary.
But like a YCS, I think if you're going to a YCS, you should test like at least 5 to 6 different decks that you can think you'll be able to take. I think that's a good number just to see what probably around the meta and knowing what they do.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
I
five to
agree
six
with
probably
that.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Because like you don't want to really test those rogue decks, because then all the testing you did, if you don't see that deck, is for nothing, and like it might help you out in the future, but it's not gonna help you out for that certain event. So like you want to have deck knowledge, but you don't want to test a deck like I don't know, Ice Barrier for a YCS, because you're not going to see it at a YCS. It's just not going to be there.
Yeah.
Like
I
we know
think
with
yes.
like some rogue decks, like we just looked at what was it, nationals and South American nationals. I think it was either a South American one or a Mexican one where Ice Barrier Sprite won it. So there's a lot of things that could just go out there and win if it puts up a strong enough board, if it's as consistent as it is, stuff like that. Like even look at Unchained when it first came out. Like not that many people were paying attention to it until the YCS where it won. So you
Yeah.
never know with most decks.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of important to an extent. Like that's kind of why I said you want to have deck knowledge, but you don't necessarily need to actually play that deck to understand the main basis of what it's trying to accomplish. But yeah, there's definitely a balance there.
For
I
sure.
think it's meta allowing if the meta allows it.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and also and this is not you physically testing, but watching if a YCS is being live streamed, I would watch that. You can see how top players play and what they're playing, and then I mean they do have rogue decks that appear on stream a lot too, so you kind of get that. You get to see that as well.
Yeah. To kind of go off of that too, DB Grinder. I'm sure most of you guys, if you're listening to this, you probably know who DB Grinder is, but that's definitely a good one to get a little bit more meta knowledge just in general. He does have some rogue decks, but usually it's more competitive stuff or a new deck that just got support or whatever it might be. So just watching is important as well. You get different mindsets.
Yeah, especially right now, it's pretty good to watch his videos because he's doing a lot of post Infinite Forbidden stuff now. So you kind of see where the game is gonna go, and what's happening with all that.
You could say he's preparing for the future.
Yeah.
That was lame. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anything else in the testing that you would take differently, with the YCS compared to a locals or regionals testing?
Just go harder.
Yeah, go hard, go home. You're probably gonna go hard and go home, but it's okay.
It happens to all of us.
So what you're bringing to a YCS is probably going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a lot of the same stuff. You're going to want your food, water, your event backpack. But there's probably a couple other things you want, especially if you're traveling. Clothes.
Yeah.
Important.
Necessities.
Necessities, yeah. Your different toiletries, your toothbrush, things like that. But at least one thing that I do that you guys have 100% noticed is I like to bring all my stuff and just leave it in the hotel room. My core binders, my staple binders, anything else, because a lot of people like to change their list the night before or a couple days before. So just having access to those so that your friends might be able to use that card or play the deck that they want or the variant that they want is cool. But obviously it's might be a lot to ask, depending on your traveling situations.
For sure.
Extra money I think is important. Emergencies do come up. You don't want to be left stranded somewhere or whatever else it might be.
Or you go to a restaurant and your card gets declined and you don't bring some extra cash.
Yeah, we had a team member who did that one time. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. So, somehow Cole got roped into paying for 2 very fancy meals.
Yeah, that guy sucks. We don't really like that guy anymore. He's not
nice
really
windows.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. It was me. If you guys hadn't caught on. Yeah. So make sure you're prepared financially for it. Chargers and electronic devices. Yep. It's important. You don't want a dead phone. For our team specifically, headphones or earplugs.
Earplugs? I was just gonna say, if you're going with a group of people, low key,
make sure to have something to cover your ears.
Yeah, because in our group, at least the last YCS, we got 2 big snores in our group, and it was a godsend to have AirPods. Until they died. As soon as you heard the doo-doo-doo, I was awake for hours.
Yeah, the problem with that is you could hear them through the AirPods, so you'd have to find something that actually got rid of that. we're also speaking about our friend Blake. We're gonna put him on blast here. Sang's also snore. There's a couple of lighter snorers, but Blake is ridiculous. I slept next to him in the last YCS. I literally woke up in the middle of the night and attempted to sleep in the bathtub. That's how much I could not take it. It was mind numbing, but we got through it. We figured it out, and we're gonna do better next time.
Yeah, and even if you're going with like a big group of people, this is just coming from personal experience. Bring a blanket and a pillow because sometimes there's not enough room for everybody, so somebody might have to sleep on the ground. That was me.
We could have made room for you, Cole. There's a tough room.
Yeah, but like the first night, I slept with like one of like the decorative pillows and like 5 towels because I didn't bring a blanket. So just like having that extra stuff is nice to know. Even if you are just sleeping on the bed, you get a lot better sleep knowing that you have your own blanket and pillow.
Yeah, or even for like the car ride there, like this is kind of just like a general thing, but you never know. Like you could get in an accident in the middle of winter, and having that blanket could almost save your life. Obviously, that might be a little bit drastic.
Kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that was just something I was always told as a kid. Like, you want to have your blanket in your car in case something happens. It's just being prepared for the unexpected is important.
Yeah, no, I'm cuddling with the boys for warmth if that happens.
And then last but not least, deodorant.
Yeah. Deodorant and a shower.
Yeah.
Nice combo.
For sure.
But with that obviously comes some hotels. You're gonna want to have to book a hotel or an Airbnb, if you're planning on staying the whole time or you don't live close. I guess in our experiences, do you guys have any like recommendations in general for like the hotel thing?
I wasn't a firm believer in this. I wasn't a firm believer in this, but that hotel's got to have a hot tub now.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, I wrote that down as well. Just in like my general ideas for the episode is hot tub. It sounds dumb, and like obviously if you can't afford it or your hotel doesn't have it, like whatever, it's not a huge deal. But in reality, it is so relaxing. Like when you've been testing all day, talking YuGiOh all day, driving all day, whatever it might be, getting rid of that stress and just sitting in that hot tub with the boys or other people, whatever it might be, is just like can be important. It really can relieve a lot of stress and make you feel better and get you to a good night's sleep.
Yeah, just being well fed, a good night's sleep, all that stuff helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, is like booking your hotel for like maybe giving yourself an extra day before and after the event to like get there and like being able to like actually get a good night's sleep instead of just like waking up and being like the 4-hour warrior, like waking up at like 4 a.m. to drive to the event. Like it doesn't hurt to get a hotel for an extra night.
Yeah, and then book in advance too. Try to do like 2 or more weeks just to ensure that you get that spot in the hotel, and then it also just helps relieve some of that anxiety leading up to the event of things you got to worry about to bring or get ready for or have prepared, whatever it might be. So try to find one, get in a Discord call with your buddies and kind of look over some different hotels and what they like and what prices work and make sure you get it booked.
Mm-hmm. And like, just like a small tip, I feel like everybody knows this, but like looking at hotels like 10 minutes away from the venue is not the worst thing in the world. You're going to save a lot more money compared to like getting one that's like connected to the venue. Like they obviously are going to jack their rates up because an event is happening. So like scheduling something that's a little bit farther away is not the end of the world. We usually do that.
Yeah. I think setting up a good testing area in your room is really nice too. Sometimes it's harder than others.
Like last time.
But just having a place to like, run some matches with your friends or go over your deck list or sit down, like whatever it might be is good. It's a really good kind of practice leading up to the event. Try not to test too late. I think that's something that we struggle with, but it is good to get a good night's sleep. It's going to help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then when you're at the actual YCS, you're obviously going to be under a little bit more pressure. There's a lot more people there. It's a big event, or whatever else it might be, Nats or Worlds or whatever. You guys have any tips for playing under pressure with all these people surrounding you?
I think just getting in your own head, giving yourself like a little pep talk, or just sitting there and just relaxing. Just take some deep breaths and just don't get tilted from it. I think it is like there is a lot of people there for most of these YCSs. Like what at YCS Indy it was like 1,800 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
lot
no,
of
it's just the
people.
main event too.
Yeah, that
So
was the
you have
main
to think
event.
there's probably 2 to 3,000 the people that were there,
Yep, just for
extras
YuGiOh.
or yeah.
So yeah, just don't get in your own head that much and just like don't doubt yourself. I think if you take it slow, but don't slow play, you would do good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to think most of these people that are walking around you, they don't care about the match that you're playing, you know,
Yeah.
like maybe the people might next to you might peek over every once in a while, but don't let that affect you. Like it's just you have your own game. You have a person sitting in front of you that is trying to beat you and that you're trying to beat, and just focus on that. I've never gotten like a feature match, so I can imagine that that would be a little bit more pressure.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%. You have like a
but it
bunch of
definitely,
people just staring at you and like critiquing your plays. It'll get to you.
yeah, and I think like what you said, saying just making sure it, everything applies. It doesn't matter that you're on the feature match. It's easier said than done, obviously, but just take a breath, relax, focus, think about your deck, think about your plays. Like, just don't get too worked up or caught up in the moment if you can help it. And then yeah, you really kind of want to get into a rhythm. Like it's definitely something that you notice that it's not something that you can really force, I guess. But you definitely like I've been in regionals and YCSs where I'm on a hot streak. I've won the last 5 matches. So like getting into a rhythm is important, and knowing your plays and being confident with your deck can be really cool. But it is also just as easy to fall out of that rhythm to get that tilt that we've been kind of stressing on today. Do you guys have any tips on how to like help getting into a rhythm or getting yourself out of a funk?
For me, getting into rhythm, it's all based off of round one. Like if I do well round one, and that just boosts the confidence and it gets me into the rhythm of playing.
Yeah.
And like when I fall out of rhythm, that's just like what we were talking about earlier. You can't get tilted. You gotta do a mental reset, and one loss is not gonna it's not gonna be the end of the world. You just gotta learn to like recover from it.
Yeah. I think the real game starts when you're X2 and you have to win out.
Yeah,
For
that's
sure. That's when it's like, all right, because like you're X1, you're like, okay, I can lose one more, we're still fine, whatever. And you lose that second one, it's like, oh shit, like I gotta
Yeah,
kick
it
it into gear now.
comes do
yeah.
or die.
Which like some people do better and some people do worse under that like type of pressure. I think I used to do a lot worse. I used to full tilt and X2. I basically might as well drop, but I have improved on it, and it's something that I work on. And I've definitely seen the dividends. It pays to work on that part of your game.
And like a
Yeah.
lot of that helps is like having like a good group of people go to events with. Like a lot of times, like specifically with Caleb, he would come out of games and be like, "I hate this game. This game sucks. I'm gonna quit. I suck." And it's like, you got to have those people, your support group around you to be like, "Yep, dude, it's all right. You're a good player. Just get back in it. You're gonna be fine."
Or depending on your motivation, some people like to be bullied. You suck. Get out of here. You shouldn't even be playing Yu-Gi-Oh. And then you just kick it up. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna show these guys that I don't. But that's obviously a little bit unrealistic. Yeah, I can't appreciate you guys enough for doing that for me. Obviously, like I said before, I definitely struggled with it a lot, and I still do. But it definitely helps to have people giving you some words of encouragement and kind of cheering you on. Now we're gonna prepare for the future. So, do you think the TCG reflects the OCG? This is kind of a hot topic, and it always has been since the split, I feel like. Um, Different opinions and different people think different things, but what do you guys think? Do you think that the TCG is a good reflection, bad reflection, doesn't reflect, whatever, on the OCG?
I think the OCG is like a good starting ground to like if you're looking at the future, like that's what a lot of us are doing now is kind of just like we're looking at the OCG and like trying to prepare for the future by like picking up certain cards or like figuring out what deck we're going to play next. But like you also have to take it with a grain of salt because they have certain cards that we don't. So
Yeah.
like they still have Link Karibo and like their combo now with Fiendsmith Snake Eye kind of involves Link Karibo a little bit more than like our combo is probably going to be different. And like you could look at like decks like in the OCG they play the Supreme King Melodious, but they also have Electromite. So you kind of have to like really look at their lists and like you can't just like 1-to-1, but it is a good starting point, to get you started in the right direction for sure.
I think the TCG reflects only like half of what the OCG does, because obviously they have cards that we don't, Max C, stuff like that. We're getting like some of the stuff in info, but like there's also just OCG exclusive cards that we won't get unless it like gets imported into like a main set or like a side set. So there were like some stuff back then where like we couldn't play this one deck because we didn't have this one card. Like one of the decks was like back in like 2014 Chronomaly, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like kind of what both of you guys and myself included kind of feel is like at least the way I look at it is I try to take the OCG in a general sense, as in your most likely the top three decks over there are going to be a good chance to be the top three decks over in the TCG. But obviously, once you get into some of the more rogue decks, the more tier 2, tier 3 decks, whatever it might be, there are going to be a lot of variations and a lot of different deck choices because of the cards that they have. Like the reason combo isn't as relevant over there as it is here is because of Maxi, and the reason that they can play a lot more Pendulum decks is because of Electromite and things like that. So I think that I like to take it as these three decks are really good in the OCG right now. There's a really good chance they're going to be good in the TCG. Then I like to take kind of bits and pieces from all the other decks and all the other tech cards and whatever else it might be and try to like analyze it in my own brain and whether I think that's going to be a good transition over to the TCG, or if the cards that they have or the cards that we have are going to affect it too much to where it's not going to be relevant. So I think just taking it in like a general sense is important, but you can never take it too specifically. We have friends, shout out Travis, that say that the OCG isn't real. And that's mostly because of those cards that they have, because it does affect the format, it affects the deck lists, it affects the text, it affects a lot of different things.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of lists, like I've noticed a lot over the past, like they run like one nib, and it's like, why are you running one nib? Well, because they have Maxi and they don't want to like draw multiple copies of nib. So
Exactly.
that's why they like, and like over there like the side deck, some events like they don't even use side decks for. So you kind of have to. So like sometimes they do like weird deck choices because they don't have a side deck, or like it is a best of one sometimes. Like for, I think it was that the Tokyo event.
Yep.
That was like
Best
a
of
best of
ones.
one. Yeah, and it's like you have to like prepare your deck for that. So like sometimes looking at their list is not gonna reflect so much in the TCG, but it definitely can lay a good foundation for sure.
Yeah, like, and going back to like Unchained, that was a deck that wasn't anywhere near OCG meta. And then
Mm-hmm.
here in the TCG, it just popped off and became the best deck. So you
Yeah.
could take a little bit from the OCG, but I don't think you should like look at it all as like, oh, this will be the future of the TCG. Like most of it will be, but like most of it won't.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard to like prepare too, because like specifically with me, like I've been playing a lot of Centurion, and like their lists are way different over there because they don't have Calamity, but then they also have Baron, so they play more like Bestial heavy, like Bestial Synchro. So it's like you kind of have to like take both lists into consideration and how you build your decks and stuff.
Yeah, I think one cool thing that I like to look for in the OCG is like their tech choices. They're really ahead of the mark sometimes on certain tech choices and like really cool things. So I think that's something that you can look at and see if it's gonna apply. I'm sure I can't name any right now, but there's been a lot of different combo lines and hand traps played and side deck options that come from the OCG because somebody figured it out or solved it over there, you know. But I guess that's I guess I kind of want your opinion on this as well. Do you like that the OCG is a couple months ahead of us? Because me personally, I'm not a fan of it. I don't like getting formats that are 75% solved already. Like it would be nice to for once be the one to like solve the format or a certain deck or certain standard lists. So I guess what is your guys' opinion on that? How do you feel about it being ahead of us?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what you said. I mean, it is like kind of annoying to see like a deck do well in the OCG and then like trying to buy cards in the TCG when they're just like crazy price spikes, you know. And it's like I kind of wish we were on like a same wavelength, but
Same release date, yeah.
yeah, because like trying to pick up like I just picked up gimmick puppet cards and it sounds really dumb, but like a lot of the cards were like low key kind of overpriced. Like Scissor Arms is like a $5 super because people know that it's coming over in the or in the TCG now.
Yeah, like cards that you would have gotten 3 months ago before the announcement
Yeah, for
for
cents.
a quarter of the price, you
Yeah.
know? Like I think there's a common one that's like $2. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like Ostinatos is like another one where it's like, yeah, all right, we're getting Melodious support. It's gonna be a $5 common. It just stinks. And it is I guess that's kind of another important part just to kind of get into real quick is like being prepared for that by ordering cards in advance.
Yeah.
I suffer from it a lot where I have these good ideas like, hey, I'm gonna buy this core because it's good in the OCG, so it's got to be good over here, or it's gonna be at least playable. And then I sit on it and sit on it and sit on it, and next thing I know, the cards are 3 times the price they
Oh
were.
yeah, I feel that. I used to do that with like some decks if I wanted to play them before. Like I did that with Pendulums with Pepe with Luster Pendulum because that came out before them, and like you just see the price spike coming up. I think it
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
all
you can
depends. You
tell.
have to take a a guess on like what will be played and what won't be played. So I think if you want to play the deck, you would have to take the guess and like buy the cards you would need first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the biggest one I just suffered for is not buying the Ritual Beast Tamer Elders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I was gonna buy
Exactly.
it all, but I was like, oh man, Elder's a $5 card. I'm like, this is gonna go down. It's just high price, and then it didn't get announced for a reprint, and then now they're 20s, and it's like,
Yeah.
man, I know Elder's not a $20 card.
Yep. And then it's gonna get reprinted and it'll go down to $3, and then all that money is just wasted.
Yeah,
Yep.
But it's it's the price you pay to play the game and the decks that you like.
Yep.
You guys ever think that the OCG and the TCG are gonna combine, or do you think that's kind of out of the question at this point?
So I think back then they used to have a combined list. Was that it? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
they. I think it was before.
Like
It was a while ago.
2013,
Like yeah, right around 2012, 2013,
somewhere around
14,
there. They
whatever it might
used to have
be.
a unified list, but then they switched it off when Konami just started printing more stuff or something like that. But I think it would be a lot easier for Worlds if we just had a unified ban list and just from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason that we can't get these cards at the same time. It's not a production issue. It's just a choice that Konami makes that
Yeah,
they want
it's between
the
Konami
OCG
and
to get these
Japan and
beforehand.
Konami.
And like maybe, I mean, maybe it could be like their testing ground of like, okay, this is too broken. We gotta we gotta ban some stuff in the TCG. But I don't know. It would be nice. Like Worlds, the idea of Worlds just sounds weird to me with two different ban lists combining into one. Like I know that's what kind of like what Master Duel was trying to do to an extent, but it just there's no reason we shouldn't have the same cards, the same list. The it
Yeah.
just doesn't make sense to me at least. But what do you think, Cole? Do you think there's any chance?
I think it's almost too far gone now. Like, I think I think
That's
they
kind of where
look
I'm
at
at
it.
too.
I think they look at it and they're like, oh man, this would be a lot of work, to try to ban and unban cards to try to make a balanced format, and like then they would probably have to stop product release in the OCG, for a couple months,
or
to
ramp it up here or everywhere else.
yeah. So I think it's just gonna stay the same, honestly.
Like I could see like a slow combination where like instead of being 3 months ahead in a year they're 2 months ahead, and the next year they're a month ahead, and then after that like we're combined. But that'd probably be the only
Yeah.
easy way to do it.
And another problem
Wait,
too is like the TCG gets like different subsets now. Like we've gotten rarity collections and like we have megatins and like it's kind of hard to like sell those products now. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be hard to like because then they'll have to do those products in the OCG as well, and it's like
Yeah, or we just, I mean, I think taking the OCG's product release schedule is pretty solid. I think they have a lot of really good products with like everything. They have stuff for collectors, they have stuff for people who like shiny cardboard, they have stuff for meta players. Like,
yeah.
I think that they do it pretty well over there, and I think we kind of botch it over here. Because, I mean, there's been so many examples of us taking years and years to get a card, and then by the time we get it, it's not even relevant anymore.
Fright
It's like,
Fright Fur Patchwork was an
Yeah.
amazing example.
oh
Like
yeah, that.
years to get that card.
I think there's
And
also the problem of distribution in the TCG with like sometimes when they used to do those mangas, they had like cards that come out of those mangas. Like a big one was Utopia the Lightning back then in like
yep.
2015, where like that was a Towers out because Towers was a prevalent option for like for Quillforts. And then Europe couldn't even play it because it wasn't legal over there, but it was only legal in the U.S. And then there's also the fact that South America barely gets their products in time for when
Yeah.
they like when the new stuff releases. I think
Mhm.
that's a big problem too that Konami would have to fix if they would like unify the ban list together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel like if they unified the ban list, then you have this like thing that they would probably start doing like the same rarities for their boxes and stuff, and like that could be a good thing or a bad thing because like the OCG like a lot of their product gets printed low rarity, like a lot of the higher end cards that are like the cards the chase cards get printed lower rarity, and it like makes playing decks accessible. But like if they unified the list, then maybe they would want to unify the boxes, and then OCG would become expensive, and then I feel like a lot of people wouldn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see there being some hostility too, because I know like there's a lot of people in the OCG who don't like the TCG format or think that we're a bunch of wusses because we don't play with Maxi or we're so afraid of it. But like, yeah, I could definitely see there being. I'm sure it's just not worth the risk for them of losing a player or a certain percentage of their player base just to make it easier on everybody else, even though in the long run it probably would be for the best. It's just probably not worth it to them.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, I think the OCG Road to the King is a great website. If you guys are looking for more information on OCG meta stuff, it's what a lot of people use, and I'm sure there's a lot of other sites and resources out there. But it's important to prepare for the future and know what might be in the meta, or what cards you might need to pick up, or what decks might not be as good anymore.
Thank you guys for watching. This has been episode 8 of On the Draw. I'm Sang with Caleb and Cole. Like, subscribe, and be sure to comment down below the question of the day.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Peace.
Lucy.